Out of the tree of life, I just picked me a plum. You came along and everything started to hum. Still, it's a real good bet, the best is yet to come.
We are the Org. Our mission is to assimilate Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and beer. Lots of beer.
Hello, friend.
Hello.
Welcome to bOrgCast 6.4. We've got some news. Yes, there's a Paramount theme park planned for Murcia in Spain, which apparently would include a Star Trek section. Oh, sadly it'll probably be themed around the parallel new Trek stuff we've got now. Yeah,
Not cool.
not so cool. But I mean, if they have anything that's based on the proper universe, I'm all for it. I mean, Spain, not difficult to get to either. So.
No?
Wow, that was quite exciting.
Yeah.
Also on the news tape, rather excitingly, some bOrgCast news.
Oh.
I know, that's not something you get much of. Yes, we've been nominated for an award. I think we have Mr. Shane to thank for this.
Yes.
Thank you, dude. Kind of never been nominated for an award before, so I don't quite know how to react. But yes, it's a Parsec Awards. So we need your help, guys, because apparently we need to put together 10 minutes of footage, I think from the past year's worth of bOrgCast, as in is the 10 minutes that really stands out and made you particularly laugh that we could home in on, because we've got to send off a 10-minute clip basically. So
I've now got visions of just our entry being me banging on about fucking cunting Clemens.
possibly, or the thing that did occur to me, you talking about your accidental flashing, which I think probably needs, a wider exposure. Quite whether it would win us any prizes, I don't know. Possibly if it was a bit more of a visual medium, it would. But so there we go. Oh dear. Lork sublimey, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, if you can think of 10 minutes, then feel free to contact us. All the contact things are on the end, and I'll put something up on the Geek Planet online forums as well, a separate thread, just to see if anybody's got any ideas. Can't believe we've got 10 minutes of decent material to send, but there we go.
But thank you very much for the nomination.
General feedback. The uniform debate rolls on. Blimey. It's the thread on the forum that won't die. Thanks to actually Tinsnip on the Tumblrs, who put a link up to you can buy replica versions of the Deep Space Nine uniform, and it's got some background information. I don't know what the source was, but it looked quite sort of official. And basically, it kind of backed up what I thought the reason for the Deep Space Nine uniform, other than the fact that obviously they wanted a slightly different look for the different series, but the actual rationale behind it being that it's basically a boiler suit for working in more dirty environments. But some disturbing stuff in there as well about where the zips are and how awful.
Yeah, I saw that. Oh.
Some more general feedback. Drew enjoyed hearing the Buck Rogers theme last time. Wayne Peters commented on the image of Ensign Janeway I put up on Tumblr, pointing out there's bound to be a reference to her being a relation into Voyager's captain somewhere in a book.
Yeah.
And we had some feedback from Sampo on Babel. I wasn't able to watch Babel before the feedback deadline, but I'll only give some quick thoughts for that. The episode was a bit of a mixed bag. I like the idea of the virus as well as everything related to Odo and Quark, but there really wasn't a feeling of a great catastrophe at any point, even though almost the whole station was infected by a fatal virus. The cure also came seemingly out of nowhere in the last few minutes. Yes, several people noticed that. Still enjoyed it though, and I'm sure you talked about it enough in the last podcast, so let's move on to Captive Pursuit, which we will do shortly, but we also had some feedback from our friend Cheeky Monkey Jin. Hello! 2 great episodes to review. This should be the most upbeat podcast for quite a while.
Ooh, are we going to manage to get it certified 100% cunt free?
I think there's a chance. I started my first complete Deep Space Nine rewatch a few months ago, before I knew that you were going to review it. If I'd have known, I would have waited and watched an episode in line with you. I have just started Deep Space Nine Season 5, and it's as if somebody has hit the turbo button. Enjoy the ride. I know I am. It's even better the second time around. Yeah, I do remember Season 5 being exceptionally good. That was probably the high watermark, I think, but anyway. We'll find out. But on to Captive Pursuit.
You've traveled almost 90,000 light years.
A wanted predator from the other side threatens the space station.
Show me where the weapons are stored.
Is he a dangerous criminal or a pawn in a brutal game?
I live the greatest adventure one could ever desire.
Now the crew finds themselves battling the unknown.
He's running from something, that's for sure.
The hunt is on the next exciting episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Another spoilery trailer.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Good job you watched that afterwards. How much did you remember of this one? Because you said it was your favourite episode, so you've obviously remembered something.
Well, I remembered that when he said "I am Tosk," Tosk was like his species, and it meant that he was being hunted. And do you know what I mean? I remembered the multiple meaning of Tosk. I remembered roughly what he looked like, that he was kind of reptilian. And I remembered he became friends with O'Brien. Mm-hmm. What I didn't remember was that the guys chasing him caught up with him. And I didn't remember anything about what they looked like.
Oh, right. Cool.
So
half the plot then, basically.
Yeah.
Let's go then.
Okay. So the teaser, you have a Darbo girl.
Yeah, this is Sada. She's not named on screen, I don't think, but an interesting makeup design, isn't it?
Yeah, she had was it a bow or a butterfly or something on some head ridges?
Yeah, I mean, she had mostly sort of bold with just sort of hair at the back and then that weird fluttery thing. Yes.
I noticed that. She says that, she knows Darbo girls have got a reputation, but she's fed up of Quark's sexual advances. And Quark has been claiming it's part of the job and written into the contract. And Cisco is disgusted, and he's like, I'm going to deal with this. And just as he's about to get into turbo lift, you've got elevated neutrino levels, which means the wormhole is just about to open.
Yeah, so as Sada leaves, she goes through a sort of side door, which I'd not particularly noticed before, not through the main doors to the commander's office. So where that leads to, I don't know. I had a look in the Deep Space Nine technical manual and it doesn't say, very unhelpfully.
It might be one of those things that later on in the station they don't have it anymore. That's why it's not in the technical manual.
I don't know. But I guess it must be a turbo lift through there or something, because it doesn't connect to ops at all. So very strange. The other thing to know is, yes, the nice comment about it was all there in the Ferengi print.
Yes.
Which is obviously the ultimate in small print.
Yeah. So the wormhole opens and a vessel comes through, which they've never come across before, so it must have come from the Gamma Quadrant. And it's in trouble, and they're going to try and get him out, but the guy inside will not abandon the vessel. But O'Brien says, that's okay, if we put it in a tractor beam, it will stabilise it. So that's what they do. Now it's time to get anal about spaceships. Woohoo!
Tosk's vessel is basically a modified version of the model they used in Unification for the Apollo-class Vulcan ships. The three that were carrying all the Romulans that they zapped at the end of it. I think it may be upside down as well, but it's that same bow shape, a bit like the Romulan vessels are as well.
Okay. Didn't really notice, to be honest.
Because you don't notice such things.
No, I notice characters. And aliens, actually.
Yeah, so what do you notice about Tosk then?
He's reptilian.
Yes. He's got kind of an interesting weird nose business going on. I don't quite know how to describe it really, but it's quite a distinctive design of nostril, which interestingly the Hunters have got as well. Later on they say that they've bred the Tosk, so presumably they've used some of their own DNA because there's some similarities in the looks between them.
Yeah, I mean it's a more open nostril, which would allow more cooling air to get to the brain quicker, which would suggest they come from a hot planet. But then so would the reptilian skin, to be fair.
He's played by Scott MacDonald, who will be playing another genetically engineered life form a bit later on in Season 4 in Hippocratic Oath. But I won't say anything more about that.
Okay, because episode titles mean nothing to me, so I might remember Hippocratic Oath, but just telling me it's
more
called...
the species he's like to be playing at that point in the series' history that I'm dancing around
fine.
section 31 on.
No, that's fine.
He'll also play a Romulan in Face of the Enemy, which must be coming up soon, I think. That was a super episode. And he has roles in Voyager and Enterprise as well. It's an excellent makeup job, isn't it?
Yeah.
I
like
eyes.
I was going to say the eyes. Yes.
They're sort of based on an alligator, apparently.
Yeah.
Very effective.
Very good.
And it's a great nervy performance.
Yes. Lots of quick flicks of the head and eye movements, taking in the surroundings. He's obviously jittery. So Dax recommends that they skip formal first contact, and it's just O'Brien that meets him in the airlock, because that way it's less intimidating. End teaser. And that was a good teaser, I thought.
Very good teaser, yes.
So you're back after the teaser, and the ship looks empty when O'Brien goes in. He looks around, he still can't see anything. He hails Ops and says, what did you do with this guy? And they sent us to say he's still on board. So O'Brien sort of shrugs his shoulders and starts having a look at the inner workings of this ship, and he's not seen anything like it before. And he's trying, sort of talking out loud, trying to work out what everything is. And then Tosk suddenly reappears, having clearly been invisible.
Decloaks. Yes.
Yeah, he decloaks and sneaks up on him, which makes O'Brien bang his head, which is...
Yeah, and the kind of way he initially sneaks up, it looks like he might be about to jump on O'Brien and do him some damage. If you hadn't seen this episode before, you may think that Tosk is a threat. And also a bit later on when he sort of works out where the armoury is, and you're thinking, is this a good guy or a bad guy? It's nicely done. And of course, he comes from the Gamma Quadrant. Ooh, yes. Our first visitor from the Gamma Quadrant.
Yep.
So, complete unknown.
Yes. And then you have O'Brien having conversations. Tosk gets confused and thinks that O'Brien doesn't know what he's doing. And he's like, I just don't understand your technology. You're just going to have to walk me through it. But they've got to wait for things to cool down before they start fiddling with it. Let's go off onto the station. And he's like, I'm O'Brien and I'm human. And what are you? And he's just like, I am Tosk. Which is the answer to most questions. Our
daughter watched this with us, so this is her first Deep Space Nine episode, and she found it very amusing the way he just kept saying, I am Tosk. Oh, Brian.
An alarm goes off, and it's a security sensor that's screened for weapons. I like the way that looked. I liked the effect.
Yes, I mean, that's there for very much for plot purposes. I can't remember it ever working again.
And O'Brien then says it's defensive, because when you go into an alien ship, you never know what you're going to find, including somebody who might be invisible and jump out at you. And then Tosk turns around and says, I understand, which is quite nice. And then O'Brien shows Tosk sort of quarters, and he just sort of looks confused and says that he only requires 17 minutes of sleep. And he's got liquid nutrients stored in sort of plasma fibres in his body.
Does that mean he drinks his wee? I was trying to work that one out. Because how else is that going to work?
Well, my assumption, bearing in mind he's reptilian and bearing in mind the nose design, was that he had some sort of photosynthesis thing going on.
Yeah, so they don't say that, do they? But yeah.
No, so he could drink his own wee. But that's why, see, my brain went to a photosynthesis place.
And mine went to a wee drinking place. Yeah, that's about right, isn't it?
O'Brien then shows him the computer and says, just ask it questions. So he brings up a plan of the station and asks where the weapons are. O'Brien's in Ops, and he's saying that Tosk is not telling the whole truth, but O'Brien is clearly not sure exactly, is this guy a good guy, a bad guy, what? You can't really tell. Then you've got Tosk and O'Brien in the ship, and they have a conversation about various technobabble that effectively is being translated, and something is a RAM scoop, and I thought RAM was computers.
No, the RAM scoop is the thing that picks up stellar matter and converts it into fuel.
Right, I thought it was random access memory.
Well, it is in computing terms, yes, but in terms of spaceships, no.
Right, sorry. Anyway, I got rather confused at this point.
The buzzard RAM collectors, don't you know?
No.
Clearly
Hence,
not.
you had to tell me.
Let me show you my technical manual.
Anyway, O'Brien then says, they'll be easy to fix. And as they climb out, Tosk manages to kick him in the head.
Yeah, it's fortunate.
Yes.
I don't think that was meant, but it was
Probably
quite nice.
not, it's quite funny. He offers to buy Tosk a drink and says, and you can tell me why you're in such a rush.
Let's go down the pub. Excellent.
Yeah. They go into Quarks, and Brian's explaining about R&R. He's like, what's R&R? And he's like, you sleep a whole third of your rotation, and you have rest and relaxation. The Alpha Quadrant has far too much downtime. And then Quark appears.
Hey, barkeep! Don't call me barkeep. I'm not a barkeep. I'm your host, the proprietor. A sympathetic ear to the wretched souls that pass through these portals.
And a man who will exploit any vice you may have. 2 synth ales, barkeep.
I am sorry. I have no vices for you to exploit.
A challenge.
Tosk is our first guest from the Gamma Quadrant, Quark. I take him at his word.
Perhaps a short adventure in a hollow suite.
Hollow suite?
A fantasy encounter with danger, romance, thrills. Created for your personal entertainment by the brothers Quark.
I have no use for fantasy adventure. I live the greatest adventure one could ever desire.
Then I envy you, Mr. Tusk.
Provided for you by the brothers Quark, which I love that phrase. Yes. Like him and Rom in business.
Yes. Tusk says he's living life's greatest adventure.
He's living the dream.
So then you have Tusk. Now, he's in a corridor at this point, isn't he?
Yes, he is. He's bypassing the security.
You can tell he's doing something he shouldn't at a computer, but I couldn't initially tell whereabouts he was. And there's a painting on the wall that turns out to be Odo.
Which it was a great moment, wasn't it? Because this is the first time our daughter has seen Odo in action. And it's like, what happened to that painting? What's that? Which she was a bit freaked by Quark, but Odo really scrambled her brain.
Yeah, did a bit, really. And then after a while, she started going, change again. Tusk responds by becoming invisible, so Odo seals off the corridor. And then I like Odo in this. He's sort of like, he's quite calm, and he's standing there and says, when you finish bouncing off the force field, perhaps we can have a chat.
Yeah, he doesn't lose his cool at all, does he? He's just like, oh, come on.
Yeah. Tusk is then like, I will not fight you, and he comes quietly. And then he's in the brig, and he just keeps asking to be allowed to die with honour. And then the wormhole opens, and they're being scanned, and then they're bombarded, and then they reverse the polarity of the neutron flow.
Yeah, quite. It's purple as well.
Yes.
Yes, this is the Hunter's ship, which is a reuse of the Tyrellian starship, which was last seen in Next Generation Season 5 as in the game as the Qatarian ship. So yeah, it dates right back to the first season, this particular model.
I was going to say that name sounds familiar.
Mm-hmm. It's the Plague ship from the first season. So
then they beam down, and there's a fight, but the aliens in the bizarre red spacesuits.
But they're really cool helmets with those blue visor things on them.
Yeah.
They look very distinctive and different. It's like, welcome to, well, not quite welcome to the Gamma Quadrant, because obviously they're not there, but, the Gamma Quadrant is clearly quite a different place.
I'm afraid I just thought it was a bit Fisher-Price.
Oh, aboo, I like it. And they prawn Odo.
They do.
Which I think is an instance of the Worf effect.
Yes.
Of course, later on in the series run, we'll have Worf to do that too, but
yeah,
I guess it's going to be Odo for now.
Yeah.
We also get our first good look at a Bajoran phaser, I think.
Yes, but why is it that Kira at one point has got a Bajoran phaser in her hand and a Starfleet one? She fires the Starfleet one.
Yeah, I think she picks it up from a fallen security dude. But yeah, at one point she's got two in her, one in each hand. It's like, wow, kick ass again.
Yeah.
She's not in this episode much, but she's got very impressive.
Yeah.
I love that look of the Bajoran phaser. It's very different to the Federation style one. Or the only downside is it does look a bit like our dog lead, I always think. Sometimes I'm wandering around, when the dog's off the lead, I'm wandering around in my hangar and yeah, get a Bajoran phaser. And people look at me strangely for some reason. I can't think why.
Uh-huh.
Oh, and it's also established that Odo never uses a weapon.
No, he mentions that before. That's why he says no weapons on the promenade.
Oh, that's different. Doesn't mean to say he never uses them personally.
No, I'm sure it's
no, he doesn't say that. Honestly, this is the first time he says, Major, I never use a weapon. And he stays consistent with that all the way through the series run.
Station crew have never come across any of this technology or anything like that before. These guys just basically...
They piss all over them, basically, don't they?
Don't they, really? Yeah.
Slightly frightening look ahead to things to come, I think, it's fair to say.
Yeah. And then they say, it's the worst dishonor to be captured alive, and then they explain that it's the hunt.
Yeah, the idea is that they're hunting the Tusk, and he's been bred to be the perfect prey, but they're disappointed because their prey has already been captured by the Federation crew, so it's a massive letdown for them.
Yep.
The main hunter is played by somebody called Gerrit Graham.
Now, I recognised the voice. Didn't recognise the face, but I'm surprised under the makeup.
Under that makeup, yeah. Yeah, he plays a suicidal Q in Voyager, which is an episode I do vaguely remember.
No, I don't really.
Yeah, it was a Q wanted to take his own life. But you may be remembering me more recently. In Babylon 5, he played Lord Kero in Season 1's Sign and Portents. He's the one that's kind of... He's a bad one. I can't remember exactly how now, but he gets killed by the shadow vessel.
Okay.
Add a bit of spiky hairdo to him and you might recognise him.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, Cisco goes to have a talk with this guy.
Have you nothing similar in your own society?
Centuries ago, people in my world engaged in blood sports, killing lower species for pleasure. A few cultures still do, but even they wouldn't consider hunting a sentient being.
He is sentient only because we have made him sentient. He has been bred for the hunt. His entire reason to exist is the hunt, to make it as exciting, as interesting as he can. Obviously, you do not comprehend.
I comprehend just fine. I have no tolerance for the abuse of any life form.
And he's calm, but he's not taking any crap. He's
he's keeping his temper in check quite clearly, because you can tell he just wants
to really angry.
Yell in this guy's face.
Oh, he wants to lamp him, doesn't he?
It's like, what the hell are you doing chasing a sentient life form?
Yeah.
Won't have it in my quadrant.
Yes. It seems as though there's nothing they can do because of the Prime Directive. But then Kira says, well, what about if he claimed asylum? So Miles goes to see Tosk, but he doesn't want asylum. He doesn't want protection, because that would just be more dishonour. Even more than being chained up and put on public display, which is what's going to happen to him. O'Brien's feeling down, so he goes to the pub.
This is why we like O'Brien. He thinks the way we do.
Yes. And Quark's like, how can I help you? And he does use human.
Yes, he's treading on very thin ice with O'Brien. As he says, there's trouble with the little woman.
Yes.
Sore point.
Yes.
I tell you what, Quark is definitely my favourite character at the moment. Every time he's on screen, he just brings a huge smile to my face. His Armin Shimmer's just brilliant.
He says, you can talk to me, and O'Brien's like, why would I talk to you?
Barkeep.
Just as he's about to talk to Quark, he's like, they've got the rules, and they've got the rules. What would Ferengi do? Ferengi would change the rules. Change the rules. Thank you, Quark. And I love the bit. It's just a little scene, but after O'Brien's clapped him on the back, Quark's feeling so pleased with himself. He goes to this bloke who's obviously nearly falling asleep in his drink. He's really morose. He's obviously totally wasted. Yeah. It's a green drink that looks suspiciously like absinthe. Which is just,
and says, how can I help you?
And then do we ever get a name for the red-suited people?
No, I think they're only ever referred to as the Hunters.
Okay.
So we get Tosk and the Hunters, and that's it.
Well, so the Hunters have got Tosk in this horrible, humiliating neck collar.
Dog leash, if it.
Yeah. And they're taking him. But then O'Brien decides he's going to sort the escape. So he turns around to Odo and says, I'll escort the prisoner. And Odo's like, no, this is a security matter. And O'Brien says, but Sisko said it was a Starfleet matter. So off goes Odo in a huff. And then he turns around to the Hunter and he's like, we'll escort him. And the Hunter's like, no, we'll do that. He's like, no, it's important. It's a gesture of goodwill. And the Hunter goes, okay. And O'Brien takes his comm badge off and arranges the escape.
By overloading that security field thing. So when the Hunter steps through, he goes, bing, and bounces him off, because of course he's got loads of weapons on him.
Yes. Odo has gone to complain to Sisko, and Sisko's like, I never gave any such order. But then when they realise what's going on, Sisko says to Odo, yeah, but there's no hurry. And then you see Odo deliberately taking these really slow steps to the turbo lift, which is quite funny. And then you get this odd scene where the Hunters catch up with Tosk, and Tosk by this time has got one of their weapons, shoots one of them, and somehow three of them are dead.
Yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it? It's like he shoots the one in the middle, and then the shots bounce back and hit the other two.
Or something. Very strange.
The weapons they've got.
And, so Tosk gets away.
It's a nice, sweet parting between him and O'Brien, isn't it?
It is sweet. And then you have O'Brien getting a proper drubbing by Sisko.
Yeah, he gets chewed out, doesn't he?
He does.
Although, when O'Brien then leaves, so Sisko turns round to face the camera and he's got a big smile on his face. Like, oh, excellent.
And then you had this really funny moment with our daughter when right at the end, Sisko goes dismissed and our daughter goes, that's what we have in Cubs.
Yeah.
So, Starfleet clearly is Cubs in space.
Yeah, Deep Space Cubs.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a great episode, isn't it?
Yeah, I really like it. I love Tosk. I want to give him a big hug.
Yeah, no, there is something about his posture and stuff.
Yeah.
And that partnership with O'Brien's just lovely, isn't it? Excellent character to put, because I suppose in some ways it would have made more sense for Jadzia to do sort of first contact and that sort of thing, but because Tosk has got a problem with his ship and he's kind of made contact over the comms with O'Brien already, it ends up being O'Brien, but it does pan out really nicely as a result. Quark's great in it. It's a great concept for an episode, Sentient being hunted. Excellent stuff.
I love the fact that the first contact from the Gamma Quadrant is accidental.
Yes.
That it's not, an official delegation.
Exactly, that would be really dull, wouldn't it?
It just?
And here's the trade delegation from the Gamma Quadrant. No, I think that's, if I remember rightly, that's a pattern that's going to continue, is that the encounters from the Gamma Quadrant are not your standard, how things happen in the Alpha Quadrant, I think it's fair to say. Interesting races introduced, obviously, although sadly we won't see them again.
No, but then that's because the Hunt is not allowed to go through the wormhole.
Yes, but they do end up in the Gamma Quadrant, so, so you could have bumped into them at some point.
You could have done, but the Gamma Quadrant's kind of big.
Yes, true enough. The ending's satisfying the Next Generation, really, isn't it? I can't help feeling O'Brien. Well, I say would have ended up in a lot more trouble than Picard. Actually, knowing Picard now, he's just gone, tut up, Mr. O'Brien, and then just moved on. You're going to criticise me for meddling with the Prime Directive, Captain? Are you? Are you really?
Yes.
So yes, it's a great episode, and it's also a very promising start to things with the Gamma Quadrant. We've had some feedback on this episode from Sampo. This episode was better. It's basically just an Alien of the Week episode, with very little of the regulars appearing, but Tosk was a very well-formed and acted character, and during the first half of the episode it's very difficult to figure him out. He's not just someone with a bumpy forehead, they did a good job on his makeup, and his personality is also very intriguing. Yeah. And again, that's a pattern, a load of the aliens, the Alpha Quadrant aliens as well, for that matter. I mean, Saba, or whatever her name was, right, the Dabba girl at the start, she's another, it's more than a bumpy forehead job.
Yeah.
It's really creative stuff. I was giving myself a Picard facepalm when it seemed that the Federation has no problems in giving new visitors full computer access to their information and let them wander around freely as if they were children. It turned out that I was a bit too hasty, since it seems that Odo is pretty good at his job. Yeah. Yes, it's far more secure than the Enterprise, isn't it? Odo also has quite a few good moments in the episode. Excellent long glares at Sisko when things did not go as he wished. I also like it when the second alien ship appears and the situation is quite tense. It's using unknown technology and is able to bypass the shields of the station. That tenseness is quickly resolved, however, when aliens with bright coveralls and welding masks appear.
Yeah, see, he didn't like the uniform any more than I did.
Oh, well, it was cool, but there we are. The whole battle scene seems quite awkward, with everyone aiming at the intruder's arms for some reason. I guess it implied they are somehow absorbing the phaser fire here, but it's not made very clear. The whole security force just seems very inefficient, and they don't seem to do much. Oh, and Odo gets prawned. Hazard of being head of security, I guess. Yes, comes with the job. But apart from that, a very good episode. I really enjoyed it. And going into almost section 31 here, you can decide, or we will. Here we have a genetically engineered species that is able to turn invisible, as well as technology for bypassing Federation shields. Sounds an awful familiar, although I don't think the species seen in this episode are ever mentioned again in the future. No, they're not. And we'll say no more. It's one thing I meant to mention was when Tosk gets free and takes on the hunters and he knocks one off the top of the promenade and takes a tumble. It's excellent.
Do we have any feedback from the Mark?
We do indeed.
Right, the Mark's feedback is going to be going in section 31.
If you do not wish to assimilate section 31 material, please fast forward 2 minutes.
Our official designation is section 31. Never heard of it. We keep a low profile. Works out better that way for all concerned.
And what does Section 31 do?
And the Mark writes, so, this is the first new species to come through. I cannot believe everyone on the station wasn't lining up to meet Tosk. Well, the overarching plot started fast. As we encounter the Dominion for the first time, now they never say they are Dominion, but both Hunter and Prey Tosk are like version 1 and 2 of the Jem'Hadar. Pretty powerful, their technology making short order of the Federation and the personal cloaking tech. Were they Dominion members? And tell me, that's not their way to get intelligence like this. Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
Interesting, yeah.
That could be
sort of an initial dipping
Scouting
their
party.
toe without showing their hand at all, because it's got a whole rationale for them being in the Alpha Quadrant and going through the... I don't know. Although that does suggest then that Tosk somehow knew he should go through, whereas...
Or he was herded through by the hunters.
Possibly. Yes, it could be.
If they bred the Tosk...
Yeah, possibly.
Sorry, and the Mark carries on. I love the disgust that Sisko has for this apparent act of slavery, and Sisko and O'Brien's sidestepping of the Prime Directive was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yes.
And can't argue with any of that.
Nope.
Okay, so we've had some feedback from the Pie Man.
Hello Orgs, Murray the Pie Man here to talk about Captive Pursuit. This is quite a fun little episode actually. First thing, it's one of the first episodes we've actually seen where something weird comes out of the wormhole, or specifically another race. Which is interesting considering we're a few episodes in and we've not had anything like that. It's actually mainly been about bajor and a crisis of the week. So that's interesting in itself. It's a good O'Brien episode. He gets some of these things, although it's a 45-minute friendship. I think Colm Meaney really sells it well. You do get the idea that, yes, he doesn't trust Tosk initially, but he settles into it quite well and grows to like him through the joined activity of fixing a ship. As a side note, I did like the idea that the Universal Translator had trouble with their names for starship components, so he was having to learn what each part was. I really thought that was quite effective. And yes, in general, I also like the way it did keep you guessing. I do remember from the first time watching it, I was thinking, escaped criminal, maybe he's oppressed. You know, you were kind of trying to balance it in your head. Would he turn out to be a wrongly accused or someone who'd committed a crime of passion? Would they? What way were they going to go? And in fact, the hunt's quite good. This is where I think it became really different from Deep Space Nine, from Next Gen rather, where Next Gen would have had a story about how bad blood sports are, and this one does. Sisko does get a lecture saying he doesn't agree with it, but it's not established and no one changes their mind. It's not like Sisko tells the aliens, oh yes, your blood sports are horrible, and they go, oh, you're right, oh well, we'll stop it. It's nothing like that, so I enjoyed that. There's some really good action scenes when the aliens beam on to the station. It's actually a really sort of frantic scene, and I do like the sort of phaser fight on the promenade, and the fact that they are facing up against something that's quite hard for them to beat. And similarly, the escape with O'Brien and Tosk is also really well done. So the guy playing Tosk as well, he looks suitably alien. I did find his little pose a bit funny when he has to go invisible. He sort of does a sort of tiger claw grrr pose, but in general he played it quite well. He was suitably alien, and sort of his discussions about the differences of O'Brien were quite good. So yeah, overall I actually really enjoyed it. I still thought, it's maybe not your best quality episode, but it's a top quality piece of entertainment, and you can't really ask for less than that. So there were a couple of spaceships in it as well, so all in all I was quite happy. I also really liked the bit at the end with when O'Brien's making his escape and Odo says, right, okay, we'll go and cut him off, and Sisko says, take your time, and it's almost like Odo's taking the piss with his slow walk because he's a wee bit confused. But I did enjoy that scene. And similarly, Sisko absolutely bawling him out at the end, and it's a harsh bawl. It's you will be sacked next time you pull it. It's not like this, even though Sisko liked it, but he didn't do the cliched, you did that and next time you'll be sacked. But another thing, good work, sir. I actually liked the way he did. He did the criticism. O'Brien walks out, and then you see the smile of, yeah, he'd have done the same thing, but discipline's discipline. So overall, yes, the aliens look a bit weird. I think they looked too much like baddies, but they could have been space police. I think when I first saw it, that was my thought was, is this some sort of police force or an equivalent of Starfleet? So yes, again, just an episode where it really hit home. Again, we had a good run on Season 1 episodes, so it's bound to come to fall at some point. Maybe it gets bad later on. We are only a few episodes in, but so far I'm enjoying the season. So I will be back. I think I'll get the sequencing right. I will be back to talk about Relics in just a moment. Until then, bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.
Yes, you got the pattern right. Well done, sir.
Yes, well done.
And very good point about the focus not being on the blood sport side of things.
Yes.
I mean, it's there in the background, obviously, but yeah, you're right. If Next Gen had done it, it would have been all about that.
Yeah.
There would have been a lot more talky scenes around that. But instead, the focus is actually on the relationship between O'Brien and Tosk, and that first contact, effectively, with the Gamma Quadrant, and how alien that can be. So, excellent stuff. Oh, and Tiger Claw grrr sticks in the mind as well. Very true. Particularly when he stood on, there's like in the detention cell, there's that bunk, and he stood on it when he gets revealed by the hunter, and he's doing that. That doesn't work very well on audio, does it? But,
no,
I'm doing the pose. Pose.
Yeah. Pie Man went grrr, not knee.
Yeah, I'm always going to be slightly more gormless than anybody else. So.
Oh, bless. But you and Purry.
Purry?
Oh, gosh. Sorry.
Early in the evening for that, isn't it?
You and either Pieman or Murray. Pick one.
Yeah.
Don't
No, he's Purry from now on.
Sorry. Okay.
We love you, Purry.
Okay. Purry, as I'm afraid we have now renamed you. I'm so sorry. You and Peter have now totally earwormed me with tiger feet.
That's right. I really love your tiger life. And that's neat. I really love your tiger feet. I really love your tiger feet.
Oh, yes. Excellent. First tune of the evening, I think. Thank you.
Well, it's better than a Frosties advert.
Why a Frosties advert? Okay, fair enough.
Right.
Moving on.
Except somehow I made Frosties Jazz Club because I'm just too tired.
Great. Anyway, dragging ourselves back onto the topic at hand.
Sorry.
It's got to be one of those nights, guys.
I think it is. Combination of beer and lack of sleep.
We've also had some feedback from the wonderful Drew and Tracy.
Hello, Peter and Emery. This is Drew and Tracy giving our feedback for Deep Space Nine episode Captive Pursuit.
Yeah, so the grumpy alien comes to the wormhole, doesn't want to leave his ship. O'Brien convinces him to come off because he needs to do some repairs. Makes friends with him. I liked how he kept calling him friend from the beginning.
This is a little bit what I thought. They very cleverly, brought a very kind of attitudey alien, if you like, into this episode. And the one person you would want to meet if you were in space and you were an alien is O'Brien.
Yeah, he's good. He's friendly.
And it just thinks that he was all like, rah, 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 rah. And O'Brien is the one person you would want to meet.
Yeah, and something dodgy's going on then. And then when them aliens beam down into the promenade...
Yeah. I wasn't quite expecting that to be the storyline. I was kind of expecting him to be some kind of terrorist, if you like. The way he was looking at weapons and things like that. That where it turned into the hunt really surprised me, actually. And it kind of made him not the baddie, but the victim.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And
he was the victim.
I really enjoyed that kind of twist.
You
in the
felt
episode.
already like you're on his side, and then when that happened, you're just like even more on his side.
Well, how can you dislike somebody who doesn't like O'Brien? The one thing I would say is Tosk is, brand new to Deep Space Nine, and they instantly take him to this kind of plush quarters. O'Brien is trying to tempt him to have something to eat with the replicator, and the one thing he offers him is oatmeal. You have a replicator for food. You can have anything in the world that you like.
What did he say? Something about his liquid nutrients are stored in his plasmic fibres or something? Isn't it? What did you say?
Yeah, you're basically drinking your wee.
You wasn't impressed with that picture that Odo was disguised as, was you?
Not at all. You can be. You are. What is his?
Shapeshifter.
Yeah, he's a shapeshifter. So you could be anything that you wanted to be.
The Mona Lisa.
Yeah, exactly. You choose to be a picture.
It's a great picture.
You could be a Monet, a Picasso, a Lowry,
and looks like something out of Poundland.
Yeah, exactly. You're something a kid is with a bit of paint. Come on now. So the Gamma Quadrant, are they that far removed that they really have not encountered any other species?
Yes.
Oh, right, okay. Like you've not even encountered a human.
No.
Or a Ferengi.
No.
Oh, right, okay. When the intruders beamed aboard, I was thinking, there's going to be some like really hard-ass man come up, but it was Daft Punk, and you're like, you're expecting them to be like singing to the guy, "I'm up all night to get lucky."
They did look like Daft Punk.
Absolutely.
And I'll tell you what I thought as well. That beaming in effect, it looked like it was being run by ZX81 Spectrum, didn't it? It was a bit 80s.
It was a lot 80s, but it started off 80s with the woman at the beginning who was moaning at Cisco about Quark using his knuckles. What the hell is he doing?
That needs an 18 rating, I reckon. What is he doing to her?
But the makeup was a little bit 85 for me. A little bit Bonnie Tyler going on there.
Yeah, especially the bow. Well, when the guy from Daft Punk was looking for Tusk and he was using his red beam to look in the cell, when it went on his face, he had exactly the same face that our cat has when we put him in the shower. He did not look happy. I really do think that guy was a good actor playing Tusk.
He was very good, very good.
Yeah, again, not a bad episode actually. I enjoyed it.
I quite enjoyed it. Yeah, it was as I say, it was not. It kind of took a turn.
A bit ham-fisted, I think. It was a bit like, hunting is bad.
Ham-fisted. You're going back to Quark and the 80s lady again, aren't you?
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it took a twist. As I say, it kind of wasn't in the direction that I thought it was going to be, and then it turned out to be really enjoyable. No, I liked it. It was a good episode. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
So, should we end on Debo?
Thank you. Bye.
That's a good way to end.
Yeah.
Oh, so much so. What the hell are you doing putting the cat in the shower?
Yes.
What? Why would you even think to do that? Can you imagine trying that with ours? Blooming heck, you'd lose your arm, wouldn't you?
You would.
Oh dear. The 80s beam up, it is rather Tron, actually, I thought. Yeah.
Which then, of course, fits with Daft Punk.
I guess it does. We did have to Google Daft Punk.
No, you did.
Well, you knew who they were, did you?
Yes, they did the soundtrack for Tron Legacy.
And you knew that, did you?
Yes.
Oh, okay, it's just me being old then. Fair enough. Googled that, and I'll look up what I'm up all night to get lucky sounds like.
I'm up all night to get lucky.
She's up all night to the sun. I'm up all night to get some. She's up all night for good fun. I'm up all night to get lucky. We're up all night to the sun. We're up all night to get some. We're up all night for good fun. We're up all night to get lucky.
I'm glad it wasn't just me that went to a wee place with Tosk's eating habits. Although it is completely in character for O'Brien to offer oatmeal. It was,
yes.
That was his wedding breakfast, remember? And then he was amazed that his brand new bride hadn't crossed the concept of oatmeal before. Just as amazed he was the fact that she was expecting him to eat fish for breakfast. And yeah, it was nice that you were wrong-footed by Tosk as well.
Yes.
I thought he might have been a threat, because it's nicely done. So excellent. Excellent stuff. And yes, O'Brien does use friend a lot, which is quite sweet.
Yeah, but the thing is, right, I agree with you. What is Quark doing with his knuckles?
Yeah, best not to dwell on that. I can't help feeling.
Okay, sorry.
I go to a Fist of Fun place.
Oh!
Sorry. So I go to the 90s comedy place. Quark's Fist of Fun, that should so be a show. You want the moon on a stick, human? Jelly! No more Fist of Fun references. Okay. We will lose everybody. Except
he is the Curious Orange.
Yes. Damn it! Stop it!
Sorry. Although that was to Umunja.
Anyway, moving on.
Sorry.
We've had some more MP3 feedback, and this is from a long-time friend of the bOrgCast. It's Mr. Dimbo Sama.
Hello, Dimbo Sama.
So, let's hear what he has to say about Captive Pursuit.
Borgs, it's Dimbo Sama here, giving my first ever proper full episode feedback, and voiced and everything. It's crazy. I get to start on a Miles-centric episode, which is great, because I fucking love O'Brien. He's fantastic. I really, really like this episode too. I remember this episode being very good, and I'm glad to be validated in that opinion. It's a really great episode. The thing I love about O'Brien, the thing that O'Brien does that I feel like a lot of the officers don't do, is that whenever an officer is talking about the Federation, or they're talking about the Prime Directive or something, they always feel kind of stuffy. But for me, O'Brien's just nice, and he's not stuffy, he's not like doctrine, he's just nice, and he takes the Prime Directive to heart. Like, he feels so broken up that he can't do anything about it. He doesn't try to get in the way, he doesn't try to break the Prime Directive. In fact, the reason he breaks the Prime Directive is to not have broken the Prime Directive in the first place. I think that's really great. And also the fact that they're doing the most dangerous game kind of thing, but Tosk is not only complicit in it, but eager to be a part of it, makes it a lot more morally grey than just, you are hunting sentience. Like, they're bred for this purpose. And whether or not you agree with that is, your own thing. I'm not going to come down either way on it, because I don't want to have that conversation and a tiny bit of feedback. But yeah, it's really well done. I love that the characters were so well handled. It's a very interesting take on the kind of aliens that are going to start coming out through the wormhole. I do have a couple of criticisms, though. I don't think it should be possible to Google where weapons are. That kind of seems like a stupid fucking design oversight. You might want to I don't even think that would have been the kind of thing the Cardassians would have let slip. They might want to have to look at that one, double check it. I love the reasoning that Keiko and Miles, their relationship's in great shape. That's why, having barely seen Keiko for 3 weeks, Miles just takes Tosk to a bar, because of course. What else is he gonna do? But yeah, also the Hunters' costumes look ridiculous. The actual facial prosthetics not bad. The facial makeup on Tosk is really nice too, but in the chest area you kind of see it's just kind of a shirt. But it's good. It's a good effect. The helmets look ridiculous. The costumes look ridiculous. They make the Hunters look like the stereotypical bad alien from a sci-fi. But other than that, I thought it was great. Really enjoyed it. I'm eager to hear what you guys thought of it as well. And yeah, it was pretty good. Pretty solid early Deep Space Nine episode. There are a lot of season ones really solid. It never gets abysmal except for maybe Move Along Home, and well, that's like not that far away now, so that'll be fun. But anyway, this'll be fun. I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna watch, and then I'll chat to you about Relics afterwards. Thanks very much for the podcast. It's great. I love listening to it. I'm gonna be 100% back into it now, and I'm looking forward to this. Make it kind of regular. And thanks very much. Keep up the good work. Bye.
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 Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, we fucking love O'Brien too.
Yes.
He's great. He's a wonderfully down-to-earth dude, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
It's always been really appealing about him. Yes, it would have been a lot less subtle an episode if Tosk wanted to have got out of the situation.
Yeah.
The fact that he actually refuses to seek asylum, and for him, the hunt is the only thing, makes it a lot more complicated, but also a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
You're quite right. It shouldn't be possible to Google where are all the guns.
No, no.
Somewhat of an oversight. But apparently it's only me that likes Hunter's retro 80s look, which is a shame. This means I'm a kind of retro guy, I guess. But we knew that anyway, didn't we? So thank you, sir. Much appreciated.
You.
So, we better move on to that classic Star Trek Next Generation episode, Relics.
Yay!
In an uncharted corner of the galaxy, a legend has been trapped in time for 75 years. Haunted by the past, he yearns for another call to action. But the future holds no place for him.
As one engineer to another, I can do this.
Can he become a hero one last time?
It's coming apart, lad!
Scotty returns next time on Star Trek The Next Generation.
So the trailer was a bit ominous.
Yeah!
It made it out to be a lot darker an episode than it actually was.
Yes,
so
it did!
Pretty curious. And Amory's topping up, as you can tell, as we get...
Alright. Oh, maybe I'll be better.
We should win some sort of award for beeriest podcast ever. 'Cause I wouldn't mind, but the other night we were recording feedback for the Babylon project. So, it's less than 5 minutes long. But somehow or other, we were absolutely roasted by the first one.
Yeah.
Back to the episode. Relics. Data has picked up a distress call from a Federation transport ship that was reported missing 75 years ago. And now it's time for Who's at the... We have Ensign Rhaegar, who was last seen in Season 4's Night Terrors. So it's been a bit of a while. She was out of uniform then. There's a massive source of gravitational force detected, which turns out to be a Dyson sphere.
Now, I have
Not
to
a vacuum
say...
cleaner, a Dyson sphere.
I have to say, right, they didn't detect this fuck-off enormous mass.
Which
Isn't
is
that
the
kind
size of the Earth's orbit around the Sun.
And isn't that a little teeny bit dangerous at warp speed?
Yeah, I mean, they must really be in the backwaters or something for the Federation not to know about this thing. It's very curious, except it's on the route to the Norpen colony, so surely they must know about it. But never mind.
It just doesn't make any sense.
No, it's an artificial planet that's built around the sun, basically, but kind of on the inverse of a planet, if you see what I mean. It's a very interesting idea. It's a great concept, and it is an actual concept
I was going
created
to ask that.
by somebody called Freeman Dyson, who postulated the theory behind it. He later claimed the science behind his theory was nonsense, but he enjoyed this Trek episode nonetheless.
Fair enough.
They locate this ship, which is the Jenolan, which is a Sydney-class ship, and it's crashed on the outer surface with no life signs. Now
it's time to get anal about spaceships.
Woohoo! Took a trip. The Jenolan was originally the model used as a shuttle in Star Trek VI. With the addition of some warp nacelles, it becomes a Sydney-class ship. The model will return altered again in Deep Space Nine, and it's also a starting point from where they began designing the runabouts. There is minimum life support operating, so Riker, Geordi and Worf are able to beam over. And they beam over, and it's just like one set for the inside of the Jenolan. It's a sort of combined bridge come engineering, which I guess makes sense for a smaller ship.
Yeah, I was going to say, smaller ship, it's logical, isn't it, really?
It's nicely designed. It's a mixture of sort of early next-gen and movie-era design work with the consoles and the graphics and stuff, so it all makes sense. Geordi finds the transporter is online and jury-rigged with a pattern inside.
See, this is one of the few bits I remembered.
Oh, right.
I mean, I remembered it was an episode that featured Scotty, if you see what I mean, but I didn't remember much else other than the use of the transporter.
Right. Well, it's a cool survival concept, which was provided by a writer whose idea was bought, despite the fact that the episode he'd written around it wasn't any good. So basically they just took the idea and used it, and gave him some credit, which is kind of nice.
That's good. I'm glad they gave him the credit.
So what they did, in order to find out who the pattern is, logical way of doing it, they actually sort of beam him onto the transporter pad, and we get the original series sound effects and visual effect, which is a very nice touch. Yes. And who should appear, to nobody's surprise, because everybody knew that this was happening, it's Scotty, wearing his jacket from Star Trek V and Star Trek VI. How amazing would this teaser have been if you hadn't known that Scotty was in this episode? I mean, I remember buying the video of this just because it had a picture of Scotty on the front. It's like, oh yes, I've got to see this episode. Long before the Beeb showed it, they got to season 6. So I watched this well ahead of time. But, obviously it was no surprise that Scotty was in the episode because his face was beaming from the cover.
And he's in the trailer.
And, if you'd just seen the trailer, you'd have seen it. Originally, it wasn't just Scotty in the transporter. There was also a chap called Franklin. No, not Babylon 5's Franklin, a different Franklin. But sadly, he's been lost. And Scotty's visibly cut up about it. So Doohan starts the episode probably putting in a far better acting performance than he's ever been called upon to do, certainly in Star Trek up to this moment. Because let's face it, I mean, we just recently finished off watching the original series, and we've seen the movies dozens of times. Rarely, unfortunately, does Scotty get called upon to do anything other than, the engines cannot take no more. Possibly one of the few stories where he gets to do more is Star Trek V, which everybody hates, except for me, apparently, but that's an amazing Scotty film.
I can remember one where he falls in love. You're right that mostly he doesn't, but there are the odd one here and there.
Yeah, but generally he doesn't get... Certainly he's never been called upon to show that sort of level of remorse, except possibly Spock's death, arguably, in Star Trek 2, but he doesn't get an awful lot of screen time. He's as per usual, shouldered out by Kirk. Yeah. Now, there we go. So, he starts off, as he means to go on, with just an amazing acting performance. I was really, really impressed by James Doohan with this. Needless to say, he's overjoyed that it's the Enterprise that's come to his rescue, but he thinks it's Kirk who's behind things initially, which is a bit odd, because he knows that Kirk died saving the Enterprise B in Generations. Apparently this is solved by a line in the novelisation of Generations, where Guinan tells Chekhov that Kirk is alive within the Nexus, and you could then postulate that Chekhov told Scotty that he's alive really, but that's the novelisation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Scotty asks how long he's been gone for, but then realises it's been a while when he's introduced to Lieutenant Worf.
Yes.
Look on his face, it's brilliant. And it has to be said that he never quite adjusts to Worf being around. By the end of the episode, when everybody's saying their goodbyes, and he just gives Worf a nod.
Yeah.
Anyway, the former chief engineer of the Enterprise immediately notices the changes to the transporter pad upon beaming aboard.
And he says something about the resonance, and I can't remember
there's a whole load of technobabble.
No, but the thing is, it did make me think... Is he talking about the noise?
No.
Is he talking about the fact it sounds different?
I know, it may be the feel of it, or it may be he's just spotted something, we don't know. But anyway, Riker hands his care over to Geordi for obvious reasons. Then, having been introduced to Beverly in sickbay to be patched up...
Sorry to interrupt you, but there's something I need to mention before he gets to sickbay.
All right.
So he's been introduced to Geordi.
Yes.
And Geordi says, "Can I ask you a question?" And touches his bad arm.
Oh, right.
The arm he's got... in a sling.
Yes, but don't touch that.
Now, once you could maybe think, yeah, okay, because there's no obvious reaction of pain or anything.
Yeah.
But then he actually slaps him on that arm and walks off, and I'm just like, it's his bad arm. He's got it in a sling. What are you doing?
Anyway, in sickbay, Scotty describes the 24th century doctors as being prettier, which is a little bit unfair to Bones, but there we go. Picard arrives and introduces himself and asks why Scotty was on board, as he wasn't listed as a crew member. Montgomery says that he was just a passenger off to the Norpen colony for his retirement. He can't wait to get to engineering, needless to say, but the doctor prescribes rest, much to his obvious disappointment. Scotty's wowed by the size of his quarters, which is a nice comparison to the original series. As he points out, even an admiral wouldn't have got quarters that big. He makes reference to the complaining of the dolman of Elas from Season 3's Ilan of Troyes, and then gets started on describing his shore leave on Orgelius in Season 2's Wolf in the Fold, which didn't go very well. He's disappointed that the ensign showing him around needs to return to duty and looks very lonely and lost, bless him. And where's Troy?
I wonder.
She should be giving him some help at this point.
She should, but also...
There was a scene with him and Troy.
Was there?
Yes, where she basically gave him some counselling, but that hit the cutting room floor. Apparently it's on the Blu-ray, which isn't out till next month, so we've got to wait till then till we see it. We'll do a sort of...
retrospective?
A retrospective on any interesting scenes that were cut from the episodes we've covered up until that point, once we've got the Blu-ray.
But the thing is, now I can't remember, I'm afraid, whether this is The Simpsons or Futurama, but the ensign who's showing Scotty around his quarters just reminded me of the Spotty guy.
Oh, that's Spotty-faced teen from The Simpsons, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
We need some more secret sauce! Put this mayonnaise in the sun!
Scotty eventually makes his way to engineering, needless to say. It's interesting how he's challenged for being in engineering in a way that countless children up to this point haven't been.
Oh, no.
There. He says he's there to help, and Geordie's clearly not completely comfortable with this. It's an awkward position for the poor chap to be in, obviously. Scotty does a wrong because he doesn't understand the changes in technology. You'd think an engineer of his ability would be aware that things move on at a rate of knots, but apparently not. He references Psi 2000 from Season 1's The Naked Time, so that's one episode from each of the original series' seasons that he's mentioned, which is quite clever. Scotty talks to Geordie about exaggerating repair times, which fits what he tells Kirk in Star Trek 3.
How much refit time till we can take her out again?
8 weeks, sir. But you don't have 8 weeks, so I'll do it for you in 2.
Mr. Scott, have you always multiplied your repair estimates by a factor of 4?
Certainly, sir. How else can I keep my reputation as a miracle worker?
Your reputation is secure, Scotty.
Geordie eventually loses it with him.
Captain Scott, I've tried to be patient, I've tried to be polite, but I've got a job to do here. And quite frankly, you're in the way.
I was driving starships while your great-grandfather was still in diapers.
Whatever the hell diapers are.
My theory is because Americans and Canadians say diapers, where...
we're assuming our Scottish cousins don't. I mean,
No,
I'm sure
nappies.
Pieman will set us straight on that, but yes, presumably it's
we
nappies.
say nappies, but my thought was that neither the American writers nor the Canadian actor would know necessarily that we say nappies, so they got him to pronounce diapers with a pseudo-Scottish accent, and it just sounds very
Doesn't
old.
make sense, does it? No. It has to be said that poor old Doohan's accent, as per usual, is kind of all over the place here. But
Well, it's consistent with Scotty in the original
it
series.
Is, yes.
What gets me...
I bet the Scots call them crap sacks or something like that. Have you got your wee crap sack on there? Sorry. No, I mustn't do Scottish accents. I'll be just as guilty as Doohan.
Yeah, you will. But the thing is, what struck me, watching this, bearing in mind my memory of this was sketchy, and I'm thinking, if Geordie is struggling to deal with Scotty, which is effectively diplomacy, which is part of a Starfleet officer's role, and do the job he's been asked to do as an engineer, why doesn't he get Data? What do we get in the next scene? I just thought Data would handle this. Data would... he would be interested.
Yeah, and just all the time I'm thinking Troy should be here, kind of taking him by the arm and...
But I can understand why, because there wasn't a counsellor on the original Enterprise. Scotty might find that a bit odd.
And I think that's kind of the nature of the scene he has with her as well, interestingly.
Yeah, okay.
But at the same time, it's just like, if ever you needed a counsellor, being woken up from 75 years stuck in a transporter,
that's true.
The world has moved on, you kind of need somebody there,
You
don't
do,
you?
but that's immediately why I thought of Data, because what Scotty wants to do is reminisce, and Data would find that interesting hosting, and Data is an engineer.
Anyway, he bumps into Data in 10 Forward as he wanders in. This is originally after his scene with Troy, apparently. He orders a scotch, of course, but he's not impressed with the taste.
No, neither would I be. This is a man after our own heart. Proper alcohol.
Data explains the horrifying truth of synthol. Synthetic scotch, synthetic commanders, as he comments. Apparently, though, Guinan has a stash of actual alcoholic drinks, including some green.
I love
which is
that.
a classic scene, isn't it? And it's also very similar to a line of Scotty's from the episode By Any Other Name. It ends with Scotty staggering to holodeck and ordering up a bridge of the Enterprise, which is a lovely sight as he walks in and got the original series Enterprise there. Of course, he asks for the 1701. The 1701 looked quite different throughout time. It doesn't become the 1701A until the end of Star Trek 4. Anyway, he gets the 1701 he wants, which is the important thing. And it's lovely to hear the old bridge sound effect. That's one thing. The original series never impacted on me in such a big way as Star Wars and Doctor Who did as a kid. It's really the movies that got me into original Trek, and then I sort of rediscovered the series afterwards. That's something about that iconic sound that... lovely
ping.
The ping of the original. Sensei ping. No. The ping of the bridge of the Enterprise.
I'm afraid that because I only really discovered the original series after The Next Generation, I'm afraid I associate the sight of the red line with Cylons from Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, the one that goes along underneath the view screen.
Yep.
Yes.
And the sound of the ping with the machine that goes ping when the woman's giving birth, Monty Python's Meaning of Life.
Yeah. There's also a lovely bit of the Alexander Courage theme that plays across the music as well, which is lovely.
I did wonder, watching it though, whether they had that set or they made that set.
Oh, well, there's a whole story behind that. They failed to get... Because originally they were going to recreate the...
Sorry.
Originally they were going to recreate the bridge for Cause and Effects Bozeman. You know, the one with Fraser as the captain.
Yeah.
But they couldn't afford it then. And for this episode, likewise, they didn't have the money to recreate the entire bridge. So what they did is they basically recreated a section of the bridge, which had the turbolift doors, the dedication plaque. And then they actually rented off a fan a recreated captain's chair and the navigation and con station. So that didn't even belong to Paramount.
God.
They were just borrowing that. They tarted it up a bit to make it look better for the screen, which obviously the owner was very pleased with.
Oh, yeah.
So, yes, they basically got a section, and then any scenes that show things like the view screen or any other part of the bridge is basically stills from the original series, which they've composited in. It's very clever.
Yeah.
Of course, we will get much more clever on Deep Space Nine, but
yes.
we're a few seasons off that. Originally, the holodeck recreation of the Enterprise Bridge was going to feature Scotty's old crewmates as well, which they were going to use clips from the original series for. But this was dropped for budgetary reasons as well. You know, they haven't quite got the technology to do the trials and tribulations yet. It's presumably the moment he toasts his old colleagues, which is kind of a sweet moment, and then you would have probably seen them then. Anyway, Picard eventually joins him. Doohan goes a bit Irish with his not at all, not at all. It'd be interesting to hear what Pieman makes of Scotty's accent. And I actually emailed him, and he said he was saving his tartan rage for season 7's Sub Rosa.
Yeah.
The planet of the Scotch people.
Yeah, it's bad.
That's going to be fun.
It's a bad episode, that one.
Apparently it was Picard who gave the Older Baron whiskey to Guinan, the green, in the first place. He is a Frenchman who appreciates real alcohol, so that's logical.
Yeah.
They reminisce about old ships, and Picard mentions the Stargazer, which of course featured in season 1's The Battle. Scotty talks about feeling in the way and has realised that he's too far behind. And he switches the holodeck programme off in a bit of a sulk, basically.
He's had too much alcohol.
Yeah, he's gone out of the happy phase and into the, remorse phase.
Yeah, he's had more than 5 pints.
Picard asks LaForge to personally help Scotty access the Genolans log to help him feel useful, because apparently they're all corrupted or something. They need to go over and do it, and obviously it's playing to Scotty's strengths.
And basically you've got a scene between Picard and Geordie where Picard says that Scotty needs to feel like a really useful engine.
Nice Thomas the Tank reference. Well done. Scotty the Red Engine. Yes. That works, actually, doesn't it? All the red engines end up getting bumped off halfway through the book, but never mind. Scotty turns up to the transporter room with a hangover, and over they beam together.
Why doesn't the transporter take the hangover away?
Well, that would be a nice little extra, wouldn't it? Data has located a portal. It's like sort of the Death Star gun bit that it fires from. It's a bit ominous. And they open a channel to the communications array that they've discovered, but then start getting dragged in. And somehow or other their systems are overloaded by the resonance of the Dyson's tractor or some MacGuffin that means that they're heading powerless towards the star at the centre of the sphere. Scotty calls the Genolans' computer systems obsolete, but Georgie reflects on how certain systems haven't changed too much over time, trying to reassure Scotty, obviously. He suggests some sort of converter thingy, which Geordie has on the Enterprise, but then they discover the ship has gone. The Enterprise uses her manoeuvring thrusters to enter orbit at the Sun, which they later discover is rather unstable. Worf points out they can't blast their way out as the sphere is too tough. Scotty guesses the Enterprise is inside the sphere, and Geordie suggests getting the Genolan off the ground. The Scotsman calls him daft, but then suggests how to make it happen, which is a nice in-character touch, isn't it? Scotty suggests doing something that isn't in the Genolan specs, which LaForge complains about, but the older engineer points out he wrote the specs and made them rather conservative. He lied! He lied to us in print.
But the thing is, though, where he says you have to be conservative at least on paper, actually, I think there's a logic there. I think that makes sense.
Well, it's safer, certainly.
Yeah.
There's a lovely moment where Geordie points out that the captain of engineering outranks him, but Scotty says that he only ever wanted to be a simple engineer, which has kind of got echoes of Kirk not wanting to be an admiral.
Yeah.
It's nice, that. He suggests wedging the sphere's doors open with the Genolan using its shields. They hail the Enterprise, which heads to the doorway. The Genolan cannot take no more. Its engines are shot, and Geordie tells the Enterprise they'll need to destroy the smaller ship to get past.
Why? Space is three-dimensional. Can they not go over the top or underneath?
No, I think the impression you get is because the Enterprise is so big, the gap isn't big enough for them to get through with the Genolan there wedging the doors open. That isn't the problem. The real problem is they beam Geordie and Scotty over, despite the fact that Genolan's shields are up. You're not supposed to be able to beam through shields.
Yeah.
Picard logs that science vessels have been sent to explore the sphere. Georgie is relating the story of the space baby from Season 4's Galaxy Child to Scotty, who cannot believe it. The older man tells him to enjoy his job. They loan him a shuttlecraft. Well, it must be give, because they ain't getting it back, are they?
No.
Scotty has now decided he's not ready for retirement yet, so it's been interesting to find out what he's planning on doing with his shuttle.
Oh, I bet there's an expanded universe book.
Probably is, yes. Everyone gets a handshake, hug or kiss, except for Worf.
Quite pointedly, actually.
Yeah. Troy gets a kiss, which doesn't make any sense, because she's not appeared with him up till this point, or indeed in this episode. But again, it was because her scene hit the cutting room floor. He says goodbye to Geordie, saying the Enterprise is in good hands, and we all have all the feels. Now, other original series characters were considered for this episode, but as Ronald D. Moore said, McCoy is old, Spock's playing James Bond on Romulus, and we couldn't do Kirk, it would raise too many other things. Nothing against the other characters, but Scotty seemed like the one with the most fun quotient. Which is a fair comment. I mean, it would have been nice to have got one of the other characters and explore them a bit more, but Scotty makes a lot of sense, so it's fine.
It does. I mean, Chekhov or Sulu, you could have done, but I think probably in the original series, Scotty had more screen time, because they alternated, didn't they?
Given how he survived in the transporter thanks to his technical ability, it all falls into place.
It does.
Doesn't it? Yeah. It's arguably the most that Trek had asked of Doohan in terms of acting, and the director wasn't sure before filming he'd be able to pull it off, but he needn't have worried. I mean, it's a stunning goodbye.
Yeah.
And I'm rather surprised he came back for Generations, really, because this is a much better swan song for the character than the weird coda that Generations is. So there we go. You had a bit of feedback down the pub, didn't you?
Yes! From Jen. who said that...
We should explain, we were celebrating Dave Probert, editor of Geek Planet Online.
Yep, it was his birthday.
Hello, happy birthday, Dave. We had a great time, and you got chatting with Jen about Relics.
Yes, because she and Marty had watched it recently,
Mm-hmm.
and it made her very cross.
Right.
Because she said that Geordie is rude to Scotty, and he ought to have some more respect.
I think he is, but I think it's because he's under pressure.
See, my feeling was, basically the first time it comes up, Geordie is patronising. He is rude. And it seems awkward and he is harsh. But later, once Scotty has started pulling bits out and saying, this is going to blow up,
I
or
know.
whatever.
You have sympathy for Geordie at that point.
Yeah, you have sympathy for even though he could have handled it better, you have sympathy for him. But the very first time he says it, it isn't justified. And he is, I felt... He is patronising, actually, and that first...
Well, I think that's part of the character arc that Geordie goes through in this, because he starts thinking, well, here's this guy who's no use to us. But, of course, Scotty comes into his own once they're aboard the Janolan, and through his genius that are unable to solve the problem. So Geordie has a character arc, and Scotty has a character arc, so that's fine. I mean, people can start out as jerks, as long as they end up realising they've been jerks by the end of it.
But what Jen said, and I agree, in terms of this specific scene... is that Geordie, as an engineer, specifically a Starfleet engineer, should know who Scotty is, and Scotty should be a celebrity in Geordie's eyes. And I think that with the later scenes, I can see why Geordie reacts the way he does. But
so
at the
which is the scene that you think he oversteps the mark, then?
It's when Scotty first appears in engineering, before he's touched anything.
Mm-hmm.
And Geordie's got his back to the warp core.
Yeah.
And he's just said to Lieutenant Bartell, I think it
Yes.
is, I'll handle this. It's that scene. So before Scotty has started trying to say, no, that's going to blow up and you mustn't do this, before any of that's happened.
He kind of goes, I'm not sure you're going to be any help to us here. And Scotty says, look, I've been doing engineering for years and years. And Geordie goes, okay then. And you just think he doesn't want to say yes, does he?
No, and I'm sure that's the direction the actor was given, was look awkward. Yeah, do you know what I mean? All the rest of it. But
I think that's fine.
But in
because
terms of the character...
It gives the character some development.
Yeah, but in terms of the character, he should, at least at that stage, be in awe of Scotty and be like, oh, of course you must come to engineering because you were on the first Enterprise. Scotty should be a celebrity to Geordie more than he is to Picard, because Geordie is an engineer. So Kirk should be a celebrity to Picard and Scotty should be a celebrity to Geordie.
I can kind of see it, but I would say I think it's done so that Geordie has a character arc to follow.
That's all very well,
and let's face it, we don't get an awful lot of character development from any of the characters, especially not Geordie, so it's kind of nice to have that.
Yeah, you still could have had an arc, though, because you could have had him all in awe and then having to do a double take because...
This person he's in awe of is making mistakes.
So he could have had an arc, just not the same one.
Yeah, fair enough. So do you want to let us know what the Mark thought?
Okay. And the Mark writes, Relics or TOS versus TNG.
Oh, it's all a competition with him, isn't it?
I love this as a kid and think watching with a critical eye has broken the simple joy of fandom.
Oh.
I love that we get a Dyson sphere on TV, done in 1992. It's a Dyson shell, but even so, super cool, and gets little reaction of the crew. Okay, I'm sorry, you obviously know what you're talking about, the Mark, but I don't. The difference between a Dyson sphere and a Dyson shell, you got any clue?
Not really, no.
Sorry, the Mark carries on. And the one good moment on the holodeck between Picard and Scotty when they chat about first loves, I mean ships. However, the rest of it sucks. Everything about it comes off wrong-headed nostalgia. Scotty comes off as a massive egotist that lies to his friends for his own self-aggrandisement.
What?
Oh, you didn't tell him how long it would really take, did you?
That was there certainly in the movies, if not the original series, so it's consistent.
Picard and Geordie both come off as uncaring and cold, as Scotty's 80-plus year gap in cutting-edge Starship engineering is a problem. And LaForge's annoyance with Scotty makes perfect sense. It's how Scotty would have reacted. I'd say yes, once Scotty starts, pulling bits out and whatever, I would agree. Yeah. And we get a defining moment of TOS versus TNG. The bombastic and brilliant TOS versus the quietly competent TNG. Unfortunately, most of this comes across in technobabble bullshit, and the metaphor of the synthaholic Scotch as to how bland TNG is to TOS, with an out-of-date and clueless once big name trying to relive glory days. Relics fails as a showcase for an old hero with none of the depth of any of the prior stories like Sarek.
Well, no, Sarek had a different sort of depth, a more pathos type of depth. It's rather harsh, I can't help feeling.
The thing is, though, given the conversation I had with Jen down the pub, I think Jen would agree with him.
Yeah, well, obviously there is an element to it, but perhaps
I don't think Picard is harsh.
No, not at all. He's completely hero-worshipping the man. And he does his best to ensure that he gets rehabilitated. He's the one who gets Geordie to go across to the Jenolan with him. And, I mean, there's that lovely scene on the holodeck.
It is lovely, yeah.
And, yeah, Scotty exaggerates, but Scotty's always exaggerated. And as I say, there's that speech from Star Trek 3 where he explains that he exaggerates to keep his reputation as being a miracle worker. So
my feeling, bearing in mind that Star Trek 3 was one of the last one I saw because I saw everything wrong in terms of order, my impression is more that with Captain Picard, you don't have to pretend to be a miracle worker. But with Captain Kirk and his fuck-off massive ego...
And he's... he'd be more demanding, certainly.
Yeah, that it's about engineers handling their captains.
Yes, I think it probably is quite a bit of it, actually. Yes.
And therefore, it's not... So it's not self-aggrandisement. It's about the captain that Scotty has versus the captain that Geordie has.
And counter the self-aggrandising, there's that wonderful scene right near the start where Geordie's really praising him for his innovative solution to surviving the crash of the Jenolan by putting himself in the transporter thing. And he says, well, it was only 50% successful because I lost Franklin. And it's like, you really feel for the guy. And
you do.
He's quite aware that he's not able to do miracles, actually. He's a really good engineer, but he can't do miracles, and that just proves it. Yeah, no, I don't agree. I think there are elements to that are fair enough, but I do think that's somewhat harsh. But then I just love this episode, so.
Whereas I don't love it as much as you, so I guess I'm falling between the two of you, I think would be fair to say.
Okay. Let's hear what Dimbo Sama made of this episode.
Hello again, Orgs. It's Dimbo Sama again. This time talk about Relics. Another great episode. Really enjoyed this as well. It's very different, but also really great. James Doohan is fantastic as Scotty. I love Scotty. I love Man at a Time stories, so Scotty at a Time suits fantastic for me. Very interesting, kind of interesting B-plot, the whole Dyson sphere thing. It's a very cool sci-fi idea. The thing with the Dyson sphere, though, it's so ridiculous a feat of engineering that if you could ever build a Dyson sphere, you would never need to build a Dyson sphere, so how anybody could have made that is beyond me, but it's cool. It was really well implemented. It's a great idea to play with. There's a lot of great stuff in here, but obviously the meat of the story is Scotty, and I like that it wasn't Scotty is useless, he gets one last moment of glory thing. It was more, as Geordie says, just because something's old, you don't throw it out. I thought it was very well handled. The bit with the green whiskey where they redo the old bit from the show was fantastic. The scene on the holodeck really choked me up. It was great. It was really good. I don't really have a lot of complaints to this one. It was very well written, very well handled. You definitely feel for Scotty, because you can sympathise where he is. I definitely feel for Geordie as well, because Geordie's clearly a big fan of Scotty. He clearly looks up to the man, and looked up to the man when he was a cadet. So to have him around is really exciting, but obviously he's 70 years out of date in the science, and you want to be nice to someone, but they're getting in the way. And you do get the idea that later on, whenever Picard asks him to go, that he's not doing this because his commanding officer, that his captain, has asked him to do it. He's doing it because he respects and admires Scotty, and that carried over really well. And I think, as I said, James Doohan did a great job. LeVar Burton was fantastic again, as always. It was really, really great. A+, definitely. Great episode. I don't really think there's much else I can say about it. A lot of great ideas handled very well. So that's all I got to say on Relics. A very good episode. A great TNG episode. I definitely put that up higher in the echelons for me. As again, I'm very eager to hear what you guys think about it. And thanks very much for the podcast. It's great. And I'll chat to you next time. Okay, bye.
Bye. Thanks for that, sir.
Thank you.
That's a lot closer to my experience of the episode, it has to be said, how I feel about it. Yeah. I mean, both the original Enterprise bridge scene and the stuff aboard the Janolan when they work out how to escape and stuff, it did choke me up something rotten, I must admit, when I watched it. So, yeah. Lovely stuff.
I'm not as... For me, this isn't... I enjoy this episode, don't get me wrong, but for me, I personally wouldn't put it in the upper echelons of TNG.
Oh, I certainly would. Just for all the feels it gives you.
Which it doesn't really give me, because I watched Next Gen before I watched original
maybe
series.
you have to have that nostalgia for the... I mean, as I say, for me, it's not so much nostalgia for the original series, which I can see the flaws of, but it's certainly nostalgia for the original movies, because Scotty, for me, only ever came alive in the films. There are a couple episodes that feature him to an extent. I suppose The Trouble with Tribbles is perhaps one of the better ones for him.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, actually, he's very much sidelined, as are most of the other characters. He's just the big three, really. It's the problem with the original series, I find. And the better episodes are the ones that do give a bit of time for the other characters, but most of the time it is the big three. It's always them beaming down, and it does get a bit wearing, I find. But anyway, let's not get sucked into discussing the original series, because that would make the podcast even longer, I suspect.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you liked it, and I can see that if I was a fan of the original series, that, well, I suppose either I'd feel like you or I'd feel like Jen, one way or the other, I think.
So let's find out what Drew and Tracy made of Relics. See if they've got the nostalgia for the original series or not.
Hi Peter and Anne-Marie, this is Drew and Tracy giving our feedback for the Star Trek Next Generation episode for Relics. Okay, so the USS Scotty ship has been floating around for like 75 years.
Well, it crashed on the Dyson Sphere.
Yeah, but
and what did you say when the Dyson Sphere first turned up? Is that the guy who made the Hoovers?
Yeah. That's how I know Dyson. That's how I kind of like associate Dyson. But then, to be fair, like Dyson, Hoover, that's how we know it. So Scotty has, turned up on like Scotty ship, and he's been out in space for 75 years, right? He's obviously had a crash. He's crashed on the what?
On the Dyson Sphere.
Fine.
That you think's
the Hoover man. The Hoover man. He's got a gammy arm, and he has a right to look pissed off, to be fair. He does look cheesed off, and he's like, I've been fucking here for like 75 years, where you been?
I told you, he's been, the pattern buffer has been kind of bounced around for ages in the computer.
Yeah, but you keep saying that, but Scotty has not been a toilet for like 75 years, he's been stuck on his ship, and he sees Worf for the first time, and I'm like, fucking hell, need new pants now? He shit his pants, he's a fucking Klingon on the bridge.
On the Enterprise.
On the bridge. Scotty has like typical old person syndrome in that they want to just talk about like the old days. In my day, yeah. And who is the best person that he sees? You should have just given him Data. As soon as he walked on the ship, Data in 10 forward is like, hi. And like he would sit there and listen to you for like 3 hours because he would just like click his switch and turn off. And like, I don't care.
He's probably working out the digits of pi or something.
Exactly, but his eyes are open. He's wide awake. Scotty don't know no different. That is the best person to give a degenerate, like old time
story tape.
Yeah, exactly. Overall, we've got nothing more to say about that episode. It wasn't great, but it wasn't horrendous. It was a kind of mediocre episode, but it was alright, not bad.
I know it's an over average episode. It's good because it's got Scotty in it and it's fun. It doesn't really push anything forward, but I reckon it's good.
It didn't bleed the mind, to be fair.
7.5 out of 10
at the Richter scale. Yeah,
okay, so I think Scotty needs new pants now, maybe the title of the episode.
Yep.
Caught in the pattern buff of 75 years needing a pee. No! all. One would hope he's not aware of it all, really. And she made the data connection as well, interestingly.
Yes.
No pun intended, data connection. But, I mean, I don't think it's the best of Next Gen, but it's certainly pretty good. I'd put it up there. But
it's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I wouldn't rank it personally among the best, but I think that's because I don't have the nostalgia.
Aha. Well, I think we do need to turn to our experts on all things Scottish and find out what Purry thinks.
I'm sorry.
Hello again, Murray the Pie Man here to talk about Relics. Well, I was always going to like this episode. Unless they did something absolutely horrible with Scotty, it was going to be very hard for me to hate it. And actually, this episode does a lot well. The Scotty story itself doesn't necessarily sideline the rest of the cast. In fact, both Geordie and Picard get their moments to shine. There's a lot of lovely classic Trek references just bunged in. I think it's very much a fan. You could argue it's a bit too much fan service, but you're putting a character from the original series into it. What else are you going to expect? The Dyson sphere is really well realised. The effects guys were getting very ambitious in this, and it's really quite nice to look at it. Interestingly enough, Star Trek Online is now featuring that Dyson sphere as well, so it was nice to see it when it first appeared. And you get the Janolan as well, a wee ship, which I quite liked. And yet the story, James Doohan does a good job in his role as Scotty. I'll discuss his accent later, I know you were interested in my opinion. And he does his turn as Scotty as always, but the story is actually quite well. How he feels useless, his engineering knowledge is 70 years out of date, but he plays it well. He plays the guy who's almost lost. With it's genuinely sympathetic. You do feel for him. I think it possibly helps that he's a character we know and love from the original series, and it does hit you in the heart to see him sort of brought down like this. You get a wee bit annoyed at Geordie when he is saying, "I'm very busy. Can you stop fiddling about with the warp core, please?" But on the other hand, then you do get the bit where Scotty gets to shine. You get to see him doing his things like, "Oh, is that the spec? Yeah, I wrote that. Yeah, don't worry, I'll give yourself a leeway." His bit about, so the captain wants this thing in an hour. Oh, and how long will it really take? I loved scenes like that. The Scotty in jokes, which were good. On to, before I go on to that, James Doohan, the scene between Picard and Scotty on the recreation of the bridge of the Enterprise, which was mostly done with blue screen. It's lovely, and I do like the bit of Picard talking about the Stargazer. It is just this nice bit of them both sort of doing that, and Scotty's resolve to make himself useful. But going on to James Doohan's accent, it's never bothered me. Part of it is Star Trek gets a bit of a free pass. Overall, what it is it's kind of I wouldn't say it's a lazy Scottish accent. It's almost not a staged Scottish accent. It's a made-up Scottish accent. If you come to Scotland, no one speaks like that. What they've done is, I don't know if they've maybe looked at the sort of Scots used in Burns poetry, which is kind of a variation on the Ayrshire Lowlands dialect, or if they've just taken some hints from various appearances of Scots in media. It's not the worst Scots accent. Watch Brigadoon rather. It's got some awful Scottish accents in it, but in general it's a bit generic. So it's things like roll your R's and say yuv instead of you've, and throw in a couple of Scottish things like we and the odd och. And if you put the intonations a bit right, you get something which sounds Scottish. But I mean, he's meant to be from Aberdeen. That's not an Aberdonian accent. Mine's not an Aberdonian accent either, but it's a very different accent to my West Coast one. Saying that, I don't sound like a Glaswegian, and I can't even do a Glaswegian impression. And I was grew up half an hour outside Glasgow, so I think that's part of the problem with these accents. It's a bit like a generic English accent or a generic Australian. There's no regional variation to it, and we know that someone from Newcastle sounds different from someone from London. Similarly, there's a variation of accents, and it doesn't really encompass that. But I blame that more on potentially someone making up a Scottish accent while never actually having visited Scotland. I would be interested to see how they'd actually do it today, because Simon Pegg still doesn't sound Aberdonian. I would like to throw that in, but arguably has a slightly more convincing Scottish accent. And, there are a lot of annoying things like, for instance, using the word diapers. It does look like someone's never looked at how Scottish people speak and what words we use. You would use something like nappy rather than diaper, or diaper as it comes out. So, yeah, it's not a good Scottish accent, but I've got to admit it doesn't grate on me. And yes, overall, Relics, it's got some drama, it's got a lot of pathos in it. You get to see Scotty doing what he does best, and yeah, just overall a brilliant episode. Possibly a little rose tinted from a classic Trek character, because I'm a classic Trek fan at heart, but yes, overall I thoroughly enjoyed that episode. So just all it remains for me to say is do keep up the good work, and I will catch you for the next couple of episodes. Until then, bye for now.
Bye. So it's a sort of amalgam accent then, so amalgamation of various Scots.
Yeah.
So it doesn't sound right because no Scotsman actually speaks like that, because it's an amalgamation of lots of different ones. It's interesting.
It's a mishmash.
It's a mishmash accent, yes. I'm disappointed they don't say crap sack in Scotland though. I mean, there are great effects for the Dyson Sphere, and that's a combination of practical effects, particularly the portal, and also matte effects. When the Enterprise comes through and you see the inside of the sphere, that's all a matte effect, which is very good. One thing that Pieman sort of touched on was how this was a nice nod to the original series, and it just made me think just how much better this works as a nod to the classic series than Unification does.
Yeah, it does work a lot better than that. Yes, it does. Thank you, Purry.
Thank you, Purry, yes.
Sorry, we renamed you now.
Next time we'll be covering the Next Generation episode Schisms, in which the crew are not getting their sleep.
Oh, no, I thought we already had the one with the no REM sleep.
No, this is different to that. This isn't eyes in the dark.
One
two moon
moon
circles and all that crap. No, it's not that. Night Terrors, that was. No, this is different. I'm not going to say anything more than that.
Okay.
Because you clearly don't remember it.
No, but then I just don't remember episode names at all. I'm terrible for episode names. Doesn't mean necessarily that
let's just say, don't say any more than this, but let's just say originally you put this down as being a Voyager episode.
Did I?
Yes.
Oh.
Anyway, and we'll be covering the Deep Space Nine, and this will be interesting to see if this is where Deep Space Nine goes off the boil a bit. We'll be covering the Deep Space Nine episode Q-Less, which, surprise surprise, features Q. It also, I think, features Vash.
Yes.
So, I mean, it does have at least one classic scene in it.
Yes.
That has featured in many a GIF on Tumblr.
Yep.
But whether it's an actual good story or not, I couldn't say. I must admit,
no.
I don't remember it fondly, but that might just be residual memories of having to put up with bloody Cupid and the fact I don't particularly like Vash. So there we are.
I don't know. We'll
Could
see.
be the first clunker of Season 1. We shall find out. We shall be recording on Wednesday the 28th of May. Thank you to all our contributors for this episode.
Thank you.
I'd also like to put a quick plug in for Twice as Bright, Half as Long, which is a podcast done by a good friend Dave Probert and by Ian Wilson. And it's put up by earth2.net, is where you can find it, along with on iTunes as well. And they're covering, at the moment, they've just started covering Middleman, which I'd never watched before, but they were waxing lyrical. And I thought, I'll give this a try. And so we found the first couple of episodes on YouTube's and watched it there, and it's like, we have to see this series. So
yes.
The Middleman, I can thoroughly recommend it.
Very funny.
Very funny.
Very
and I
good.
can also thoroughly recommend Twice as Bright, Half as Long, because they're a great double act.
Yes.
Star Ian and our Dave. So there you go. That's our little recommendation for this week. We'll catch you next time, folks. Cheerio, bye.
Bye. The bOrgCast is brought to you by the lovely people at GeekPlanetOnline.com.
All music referenced is for illustrative purposes only, and no copyright infringement is intended.
To contact us, you can use the forums at GeekPlanetOnline.com.
Visit our Tumblr site at bOrgCast.tumblr.com, where you'll find images accompanying the episodes discussed in this cast.
Send email messages or MP3s to bOrgCast at GeekPlanetOnline.com.
Or you can contact us via Twitter on rev_org or bOrgCastAmmo. #bOrgCast.